Hello and welcome to Hexed Encountered. My name is Joe. Today I'm going to be doing a first look video at the newest Band of Brothers game. This is Old Breed South Pacific. It is from Worthington, and it was designed by Dean Haley and Jim Crone. So there was obviously Screaming Eagles. That was the first game. Then we had Texas Arrows, Ghost Panzer, and now Old Breed South Pacific. There was also some additional releases as well that were, additional missions and things like that. So let's take a look and see what's in the box here. All right, so updated rules, version 2.2. Okay, so an interesting thing here. So we have 36 pages of rules. So as I mentioned, version 2.2, 36 pages. This is the rule book from Ghost Panzer, which is version 2.1. Okay, so somewhat similar. The main difference, I would think, is the font here is much larger. Other than that, there's not a lot of differences in the the sections, say. So if we go to section 9 here, section 9 op fire, section 9 op fire. So the main difference is the font has gotten bigger, so the rule book gets bigger, obviously. You also have additions to the game to account for the new theater and the new forces that are in that theater, namely the United States Marine Corps and the forces of the Imperial Japanese as well. So you do get a look at what the counters look like, etc. And then, as I mentioned, the rule book. If you're familiar with this series from the previous games, like I mentioned, Ghost Panzer, which was 2.1, this is 2.2, and the main difference is the layout remains fairly similar, but you do get some additional information that wasn't in the previous one. So, like, just to go back again one last time here, you can see that they have highlighted and broken out specific things that they don't have in the previous version. So there is no 3.1 here for company CPs. It's here, because you have command points, but company command points is something new. So that's an addition. And then you also have the yellow text for examples. In previous versions, they were just red highlights. So you can come through and you'll see things in here that are specific to the Pacific. Let's see if I can find an example of that. Well, here's one thing. You do have landing craft for the Marines. Facing, which was optional for the European-based games, is required for the Pacific, and it mentions that pretty early on in the rules. If I can find infantry facing. So you see you have a company identifier. So that's here. It's a stripe on the counter. We'll see the counters here in a moment. But there's an infantry facing, which was an optional rule in Band of Brothers scenarios set in Europe, but is required for those set in the Pacific. So it's important for the way the Japanese forces work. And I will be doing a playthrough, probably several, on this game. I do like the tactical games, as you may know if you watch my stuff regularly. I'm going to be playing some of the Mission Pack 1 stuff from Last 100 Yards as well, sometime in the near future. Obviously, I just played the 65 squad level battles from Flying Pig recently. One of these days, I'm going to do something on ASL Starter Pack and, some of the other tactical games out there to try and kind of go over, pretty much everything that's out there in the tactical realm. So, scenario book. You do have some training scenarios to help you learn the game, so that's always good. Then you get into the regular scenarios here. The Mechanical, so that's Guadalcanal. And you have Pride and Prejudice. It's going to be that kind of war. So, theme has always been pretty strong with this series. Not that it's lacking in other games, but a lot of people, for example, maybe they don't care for the counter, the font, and maybe the artwork. I think it's pretty cool, actually. But you get some historical information and everything about the scenarios, including the date. You can tell by the dates, and it actually tells you right there, Bloody Ridge, Guadalcanal. So yeah, you have a whole bunch of scenarios in here, starting with 49 and going all the way through 68. So this is 44, New Britain. Now, because it's the old breed, South Pacific, it's going to focus, obviously, on the old breed, which was first Marines, and Guadalcanal and other, things in the South Pacific. I believe that ultimately they're going to hope, or the plan, I believe, as I said, is to kind of branch out and do some Central Pacific stuff as well. Obviously, there's plenty of topics that this series has not yet covered. Even back in Europe, there are things that have not yet been covered. So let's take a look at some of the maps. So the maps are real nice. They're mounted thicker than Ghost Panzer. Let me grab a Ghost Panzer map and I'll show you the difference. Here's Ghost Panzer. This is map 20 with map 15 on the other side. So if you go side-by-side comparison, I think the colors are a little bit more vibrant, and obviously this is more jungle, and this would be more European terrain. Obviously, this would be Russia from Ghost Panzer. This is a Russian village. This is used in the training scenario, and I have it upside down. This is used in the training scenario. The play example, that's actually in this book as well. In the rule book here in the back is the, I think it's right here, extended example of play. It uses board 20, which is this board right here, and it's the Russians and the Germans. So, but I just wanted to show that this is one panel, and the cardboard, it's not thin at all, but it's not as thick and beefy as this one is. This one's probably at least a third more thick than that one is. So this is map 36 on one side and 35 on the other side, and you can see the terrain features. You have elevation, obviously, you have jungle, you have different types of kunai grass, and et cetera, et cetera. So you do get 1, 2, 3, 4 maps, 2 panels each, and all of them are double-sided. So you're getting 8 maps. Now here's our counters. So you get 3 sheets, almost 3 full sheets of units, and then 2+ sheets of markers, and so on and so forth. If you've played this before, you know that there are 2 levels of suppression that can be applied to a unit. So the yellow is the first level of suppression, and then here on these counters. So here we have a Marine counter. This is a Marine squad. Again, the color bar up here is the company designation. And then you have 3 levels of morale that relate to suppression. So the 10 would be no suppression. The 6 would be first level suppression. The second means that they've been fully suppressed, and they have also taken, typically that means they take a casualty as well. Or it can mean that, depending. So you have a company hub, because you have company play in this now as well. There are decoys, so you have hidden units. This is a 2-player game. There are some rules where you can play solitaire, but the main thrust with this, as with most tactical games, is to play it 2-player, as you would expect. So if you're familiar with the counters, you have full firepower. What is the second one called? Something with a P. I hate when I draw a blank. I gotta look. The second one is proficient firepower. That's it. I couldn't think of proficient. Sorry about that. So you have your full firepower, your proficient firepower, and then your melee firepower. Melee is important. The Marines are very tough in melee, as you might expect from reading about them. These are weapons teams. You have the WT here at the top. These will tell you that tells you it's a weapons team. All squads have 5 movement points. Weapons teams have 4. That's one of the things in there as well. I don't want to go too much into the rules because, like I said, I'm going to do a playthrough. But I do like my quote-unquote unboxing videos to be a little more than just, hey, here's a counter sheet. Let's look at the counters. I like to talk about some of the context, give a little context on the game as well. So, as you might expect, with Marines, you have some landing craft. We have some LCPs and LVTs as well. You do have some armor. The Marines, obviously, in the Pacific, armor didn't play anywhere near as big a role. These counters pop out real easy. And they're already pre-rounded. These Worthington's components are simply, tremendous. But as I was saying, you have, the M4A1, that's a Sherman. You have several of those. You have some M3A1s. You have some Stuarts as well. Some trucks, basically trucks. Bulldozer, things like that. And then the Japanese, you can see the Japanese have, they're laid out pretty similarly. Their melee is also a 5, which is pretty tough as well. There are rules for bonsai and things like that. And again, I'll get into all of that when I actually do my playthrough video, which I'm hoping to do sometime in the next few days. I have so many games I want to do playthrough videos on right now that have come out recently. In addition to this one, there's the Last 100 Yards mission pack, as I mentioned. Carrier Battles, Philippine Sea, Aces of Valor. There's just a whole bunch, and that's just basically scratching the surface. So we have Japanese. You do have some Japanese armor, I believe, as well. Yep, down here. You have the Ha-Go and the Chi-Ha tanks. Sorry, Ha-Go and Chi-Ha. They have concealment markers, decoy markers as well, just like the Americans do. They have their company identifiers as well. Then we have, various other markers, more concealment markers, foxholes, artillery. Artillery's off board, but you do get artillery in some scenarios. There are, as you would expect in the Pacific, you have some bunkers, you'll have some caves. There's a monsoon marker and a no monsoon marker on the other side. So you can see that the artillery is double-sided as well. You have 120 millimeter, 100 millimeter on one side. I mean, they're double-sided because they get a used thing. That's another thing that when you play this and you've used a unit, they have used markers, as you can see here. They're on the back. I'm just going to leave that out. You got to be real careful with these. They pop out real easy. So here are suppressed markers. So this would be first level suppression. On the back, you have fully suppressed. There are Saishin rules. That's, again, that's Japanese specific. And we'll get into that later. You get smoke, movement markers, etc., etc. So, yeah, this, there's a whole bunch in here that is kind of new to the system. And I'll get into that when we do the playthrough video. So we get some player aids too. Two-sided. So this is similar again to what you would see in the older games. The layout's a bit different. There's a little bit more in here. As the series continues to grow, they pack more and more into it. The player aids and the rules obviously have to change with that. So you do have, basically if you're not familiar with the system, when you're doing fire, you have your base firepower, and then you modify it with things like terrain and situations. So that's where that comes in. And then here you'll have things about what infantry proficient firepower, when that is used as opposed to full. Squads and weapon teams roles while firing at an infantry and gun artillery rules. The guns and vehicles have a proficiency check. So if you wanted to use your gun or vehicle, you would have to roll for a proficiency check to make sure that they actually can pull it out. A big thing in this system is giving an order and having the possibility that that order will not be carried out because the troops are suppressed or things like that, or just not proficient, not well led. There are command points. As I said, I don't want to really get into all the rules at the present time because I'm hoping to keep this relatively short. Worthington typically gives us a counter tray. They did that again here. Pretty nice. I find that useful because we have a lot of counters to store, and it's nice to have a tray. We do get 2 dice, 2 10-sided dice. The game uses, you also will need a 6-sider for artillery, because when you have artillery, you might have some artillery where it would drift and be off target, and then you'd roll a 6-sider to kind of determine which of the hexes around it. So, if it was here and we were aiming here, you'd go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for around it if it was off target. So that's pretty much it. That's everything that comes in the box. There is a lot of game here. I'm not going to lie. I'm sure you can see that with all these counters, all those scenarios. And again, the system itself goes pretty deep in terms of scenarios as well. As I lose another counter, tuck that back in. I'll punch all these guys later, but I am going to try to do a playthrough of this in the very near future. Here are our maps. These maps are really cool. Worthington's, like I said, their components are really good. They're up there with Flying Pig, and if you've watched any of my Flying Pig videos, I love Flying Pig games components. The quality of their components is truly outstanding. So we have Old Breed South Pacific. This again is Band of Brothers, which is a tactical squad level system. Jim Crone started it. Dean Haley jumped on board to help with this particular edition, or I guess this edition, the South Pacific edition. But the system is really good. It's pretty innovative. It's fun. And we'll get into the mechanics and all that stuff. I kind of touched on them a little bit, but we'll get into the full boat when I do my playthrough video. So for now, that's going to do it. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Please consider liking, sharing, and/or subscribing. And if you are a subscriber, as always, thank you very much for your support. It is much appreciated. So that's going to wrap it. Until next time, my name is Joe. This has been Hexed Encountered, and happy gaming.